From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. The Guatemalan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has asked the United States to open an investigation into the death of Jakelin Caal. The 7-year-old migrant died while in the custody of U.S. border agents. The Foreign Affairs Minister also said that the documentation necessary to repatriate Jakelin's body is ready as well, and that she will be returned to her family in Guatemala. And deported migrants have protested against U.S. migratory policies in Mexico City. Demonstrators from Mexico and Central America gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy in the Mexican capital. They protested against U.S. policy and demanded justice for migrants.
What is happening on the border of Tijuana gives me a feeling of solidarity. We know what it is to have to leave our countries for better opportunities, to be separated from our families and face difficult situations, such as the risk of deportation.
Donald Trump's family are migrants as well, so I don't understand why he's being so racist towards us. We only want to survive.
Now, shocking footage has been released from the U.S.-Mexico border where migrant children have been marked with numbers. Footage has emerged showing numbers written in black ink on the arms of children while their families have been stuck for weeks at a migrant shelter in Casa del Migrante. It is not yet known how and when the practice of tracking migrants numerically began. According to reports, it has become standard for all those seeking asylum at a number of ports of entry into the United States. The United States has committed billions of dollars towards development in Mexico and Central America, according to the U.S. and Mexican and U.S. governments. Both administrations said it is part of a plan to strengthen economic growth and curb migration from the region. The money will be allocated to existing aid programs as well as new loans and private sector support.
We want to address the underlying causes of migration so that citizens can build better lives for themselves and their families at home.
The prosecution in Argentina has requested 22 years in prison for the social activist Milagros Sala. Now, she's accused of criminal association. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Roth, has more.
The prosecution has requested 22 years in prison for Milagros Sala on the grounds of criminal association. This is the third case opened against the social activist. It started on January 16 when Sala was arrested for participating in a protest even though the demonstration was peaceful. The prosecution says Milagros Sala is the head of a criminal association and has committed fraud and extortion against the state. However, we still need to wait for the plea made by the other parties, and of course by the defense, which rejects these accusations and will point out all of the irregularities that have occurred during this judicial process. It is estimated that it will take 2 weeks for all the pleas to be presented. After that, we will learn Milagros Sala's sentence. In this third judicial process, she has had to face. She remains in detention.
Ecuador's National Assembly has approved several reforms to the communications law passed 5 years ago by the government of Rafael Correa. The reforms eliminated the articles that regulated the media, as well as those on administrative and economic sanctions on media organizations. Reforms also touched on the protection against media tax and the renewal of television and radio frequencies. Opposition parties said that this law doesn't allow for freedom of expression. Staying in Ecuador, the government of Lenin Moreno has announced new economic measures, including rising gas prices as well as reducing wages and jobs. In a press conference, the government announced that it will be slashing subsidies for gas. That means that regular gas will now cost $1.85, up from $1.48. Moreno's government will reduce the salary of public workers by 5% and will be eliminating 25,000 vacant positions to cut public spending. Our correspondent Denise Herrera in Quito tells us more.
Minister of Economy Richard Martinez, alongside Labor Minister Raúl Ledesma, and the Secretary of the President, Sebastián Roldán, stated that the cost of gasoline will rise from 1.48 to 1.85 per gallon. They stated the diesel for public transport and domestic use won't be modified and say that it won't affect taxis.
As President Lenin Moreno ordered, we've decided to cut the subsidy generated by dirty markets. This is inefficient and hampers our ability to fulfill our social obligations, such as revealing the real numbers. As we said, this was ordered by our president, so we've decided to reduce the subsidy for extra and EcoPath fuel.
The National Assembly held its debate on the 2019 general budget. The budget includes the allocation of funding for education, health, universities, and a system to prevent violence against women. The Citizen Revolution movement rejected the budget. They expressed that with this bill, 2019 will be the year of austerity.
The most concerning announcement is the cut to gas subsidy. The fuel's price will increase by 46%, meaning that it will increase from $1.17 per gallon to $1.71. We must also consider the other prices. An increase of 19% in diesel shows that the government won't fulfill its plan, but instead it is applying neoliberal policies. The question is, are they deciding this on their own, or are they following the IMF's orders so that the country gets loans to finance the coming year?
Citizens are rejecting these measures.
This will affect everyone, because even the poorest, who may be using older vehicles, will have to pay more. The minister is a business owner. He won't be affected, but the people will.
I was expecting this due to the change in the country's politics. It is us, the citizens, who will be directly affected. The ones who work in the streets will feel the damage.
According to President Lenin Moreno, these measures will amount to a saving of $700 million, which will transfer to the National Treasury to be used to protect healthcare, pensions, public loans, and for debt relief for the middle class. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
We'll take a short break now, but we will have more news after this.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Guatemalan President Jimmy Morales has given a 72-hour deadline to the International Commission Against Impunity to leave the country. There are 11 commissioners left who have been investigating corruption cases throughout the country. Earlier this year, Morales had banned the head of the commission from re-entering the country, announcing that CICIG's mandate would not be renewed. This after the anti-corruption body launched a series of investigations against high-level officials. Morales and his family were part of multiple corruption investigations. And our correspondent in Guatemala City, Mario Rosales, has those details.
Social organizations and 2 lawyers in Guatemala have filed 3 complaints in the Constitutional Court against the decision made by President Jimmy Morales to expel 11 researchers from the International Commission Against Impunity. They say the decision of expelling them is not legal, given the accords between the Guatemalan state and the United Nations on the creation of the commission. They say that only the chief of the organization is entitled to withdraw the immunity of these researchers, so the Guatemalan state cannot decide by itself on this matter. Now, the Constitutional Court will have to decide on the issue. The government of President Jimmy Morales has had different disputes with the Commission over the past few years.
Now to Venezuela, where the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, has denied rumors that Russia planned to build a military base near Caracas.
I wish it were true. Not 1, but 2, 3, 4, 10. It's not the Russians. We are the ones who want this country. We are the patriots who are going to defend this country in good times and in bad times.
Mexico has often been described as an intoxicating place for artists. The country's thriving creative scene has given rise to a new generation of artistic talent. However, these cultural practitioners now fear that proposed budget cuts will threaten the sector's viability and create a culture crisis.
Artists gather outside Congress to protest what they say is a cultural crisis. The 2019 budget proposes significant cuts in arts funding. The cultural practitioners want to meet with no less than the president of the Budget Commission.
We want a revision on the budget for culture. We are concerned about the cuts it has suffered.
A number of programs have been cut in various sectors. According to official sources, the government has said it wants to reduce the so-called superfluous expenses.
We understand there is a need of an austerity programs and that certain expenses and privileges should be deleted. But we are worried because there are 500 programs at risk.
Artists also lament that most of the cultural programs take place in the capital city, while provinces are left out.
Culture is basic and fundamental to understand our society, to understand our current issues and the effect they have on us, like social insecurity.
They say the full impact of the funding cut will be felt not only by practitioners, but the wider society.
The new government has said that economic development is not enough, that we also need to develop our souls, so then we need culture for that.
On December 15th, the public budget for 2019 was presented in Congress. Lawmakers have until December 31st to present any changes to the fiscal package and approve it.
Bolivian President Evo Morales is celebrating 13 years in power. Thousands of supporters joined Morales in the city of Cochabamba to commemorate the day. In more than a decade, Bolivia has cut poverty by almost 40% and registered the 5th largest economic growth in Latin America. Morales is set to run for office once again.
The right wing come from dictators. We won with more than 50%. Then, in the last election, we won with more than 60%. And they call us dictator? The unity of the Bolivian people is democracy. It's a consensus. If we won with more than 50%, then with more than 60%. Then, brothers and sisters, in the coming years, we have to win by more than 70%. That's what we want.
Morales has also announced a new record for the country's gross domestic product, which has risen to $40.5 billion, a 10% increase from last year. The new GDP record surpasses the previous record set in 2017 and is 4.5 times the amount of the country's GDP in 2005. Morales said that Bolivia's economic growth is due to the nationalization of the hydrocarbon industry back in 2006. Cuba's National Assembly said the proposed reform of the Constitution that would have allowed for same-sex marriages will be discussed in a family code. Our correspondent, Alian Fernandez, explains this and other reforms.
Cuba's State Secretary Homero Acosta has informed lawmakers on some of the results of the referendum that has been taking place over the past few months, where citizens have been given their thoughts on the text of a new constitution. He also announced close to 9 million Cubans took part in this process, and nearly 60% of the current constitution has been rewritten. Acosta asked lawmakers in charge of drafting the new constitution to consider the results of the referendum. He also mentioned some of the most controversial topics in the next text, among them Article 68, which proposed defining marriage as the union between two people, which would have opened the door of same-sex marriage. Acosta told lawmakers that this debate will be postponed and to not specify the subjects who are allowed to be married, but to leave the definition of marriage itself as a legal and social institution. He asked them to make a proposal for a family code, which will need to be debated by Parliament and then taken to a referendum. Acosta also talked about another important amendment, which is limiting presidents to 2 terms in office, and brought up demands by citizens to see an increase in wage for Republic workers. Other issues are set to be debated by lawmakers. As they study the draft of the new constitution, if this text is approved, citizens will take to the polls next year to either approve or reject the new constitution.
Police in Peru have taken to the streets to prevent traffic accidents during the Christmas season in unique outfits. Officers dressed as Santa Claus rode their motorcycles in Lima as part of a campaign to raise awareness about traffic safety during the holidays. This has become a tradition in Lima, running for the last 19 years. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. We start the world section with news that the Spanish Supreme Court is set to decide on the case against the pro-independence Catalan leaders. Our correspondent in Catalonia, Joan Ortiz Sierra, gives us the latest details.
There are still no details about the meeting between Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and Catalan President Quim Torra, as they are still negotiating what will be up for discussion. However, the meeting itself has been confirmed. The Catalan government wants to speak with the Spanish government as equals, but the Spanish government wants to make the hierarchy between both parties clear, saying that Sanchez is the Prime Minister of a country, while Torra is the leader of an autonomous community. It is unclear if other government ministers will be present at the meeting. What we do know is that the popular response to the meeting is already being organized. Social organizations have planned a citizens' council, and there will be protests in Barcelona. On Friday, a meeting of the Spanish cabinet is planned in Catalan's capital, and the Spanish and Catalan leaders will meet on Thursday. On Friday evening, supporters of Catalan independence will march in the city. while a union demonstration will take place at the same time.
Polling stations have closed in Madagascar after an intense but peaceful day of voting in a runoff election. Both candidates pledged to accept the results of the election, putting to rest fears that contested results could lead to violence and instability. In the first round, Andry Rajoelina won 39%, while Mark Ravalomanana received 35% of the votes. Both camps alleged that they were victims of fraud and cheating. Final results are expected to be announced within the next 10 days.
What I hope from the next president is he considers the everyday lives of Malagasy people, so they may increase our wages and develop fresh ideas that will work for us, and also to be fair in managing Madagascar's resources.
And there are 4 days to go before the presidential elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the government has banned rallies in the capital Kinshasa, citing security reasons. The last few days have been marked by an upsurge in violence. Last week, 7 opposition supporters were killed in confrontation with security forces. The latest polls show that the opposition candidate, Felix Tshisekedi, leading the race with 36% of the vote. And at least 10 people have been killed in Ethiopia when the vehicle they were in was hit by a roadside bomb. According to security officials, the incident occurred on a highway in the Oromo region. Ethnic conflicts in the area have killed dozens in the last few months. The government is struggling to contain ethnic violence in many parts of the country. The United Nations Special Envoy for the Middle East has addressed the Security Council in the conflict between Palestine and Israel. Our correspondent in Cairo, Nayara Tado, has those details.
The United Nations Special Envoy for the Middle East has denounced Israel for what he called recurrent violations of the international law. The UN official questioned the actions taken against Palestine and the killing of its people in countless attacks. These statements came during a meeting of the Security Council on Tuesday, aimed at debating the recent increase of attacks in Palestine and the increasing number of victims. The report shared with the members of the Security Council also reported that at least 2,000 Palestinian children have died since September 2002. Violence in the West Bank has increased in recent weeks, especially as the demolition of Palestinian communities continues. The UN official also questioned the peace process between Israel and Palestine, adding that the recent ceasefire agreement hasn't been enacted.
The Yellow Vest protest has now hit Taiwan. More on that and some of the other stories making news around the world.
Thousands of protesters wearing yellow vests have marched in front of Taiwan's presidential palace, calling for tax and judicial reforms. They're also calling on the government to stop using fines and taxation as a means of political persecution against anti-government organizations. Taiwan's Yellow Vest movement started in 2016, rallying against unfair taxation.
I'm coming here to protest the unjust tax system because the current tax system in Taiwan is very intransparent and unstable, and you can see lots of fraud in the tax system. So this caused lots of foreign companies retrieving their investment from Taiwan, and also lots of local companies cease operating, and that seriously impacts our working environments.
Quiet fell over the Yemeni port city of Hodeidah as forces from both the Saudi-backed Yemeni government and Houthi rebels observed the UN-brokered ceasefire. The truce, which was hammered out after a week of peace talks in Sweden, will see all forces withdrawn from Hodeidah in the coming month. They will be replaced by so-called local security forces. 9 crew members of a cargo ship who were stranded aboard their vessel have been brought to safety in Turkey. They were rescued using a zipline after heavy winds caused the vessel to run aground, just off of Istanbul's coastal district of Sile. Emergency workers are still trying to rescue 7 others.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled that U.S. forces will soon fully withdraw from Syria, having completed their mission to defeat the Islamic State group. Soon after Trump tweeted about ISIS's defeat, the White House announced that the U.S. has already started bringing home troops from Syria. This as it moves to the next phase in the campaign against Islamic State. The U.S. has about 2,000 troops in Syria, many of them special operation forces working closely with an alliance of Kurdish and Arab militias known as the Syrian Democratic Forces. New York is one of the richest cities in the world. However, 1 in every 5 citizens depend on food banks. Official statistics reveal that more than 1 million people are in need of this help.
From November 2013, the need for emergency food services has risen dramatically due to cuts to the nutritional assistance program known as SNAP.
People think about people that are hungry. You think about the people you see in the train, on the steps, and that's your association with that. But in reality, it's your cousin, it's your aunt, it's your own family, and they don't even tell you that they go to food pantries every single day just to eat and survive.
According to the latest report from the New York Food Bank, 80% of food banks and soup kitchens have seen an increase in the number of people in need in recent years.
When you can't give them food, you give them a little milk or bread. They'll never leave empty-handed.
The situation is most critical in the Bronx, where 31% of the population relies on the Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP, that is. 22% in Brooklyn, 14% in Manhattan, and 13% in Queens and Staten Island. Even the police are conscious of the problem and are helping people in need.
You know, I'm trying to work with different food banks, so we did contact, there's a food bank here who serves, they give groceries out and they do serve food Tuesday to Friday from 9 to 1 and then from 2 to 4. So there are food banks in the neighborhood that are trying to help people and give them groceries and stuff like that, and also give services. So that's what they're trying to do here in this neighborhood because of everything that's going on.
According to the food bank, 54% of places offering food don't have enough provisions, even though their operating costs are low, and half of them work with volunteers. Official data reveals that 1.4 million New York citizens depend on food banks and soup kitchens.
Now, Christmas decorations are lighting up Syria's capital, Damascus. The city is marking its first holiday season since the government regained control of most of the country. A 30-meter-high Christmas tree has been set up in the city center. The decorations are bringing light back to the capital after 7 years of civil war. And we end with some breaking news from Brazil. A Supreme Court judge has ruled that all those imprisoned after being judged by second-level courts should be released. The decision by Judge Marco Aurelio could lead to the liberation of the former president, Luiz Ignacio Lula da Silva. It is still not clear if or when the ruling might be implemented. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyaenglish.net. For viewers in Africa, we are on Starstat 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. All of you can join us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talisya English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.